Well, hey, we've got a show for you tonight. I did not know we had a celebrity in the studio, but we certainly do. Dr. Balls, aka Jason Beamer, and I've got some weird freaking reverb going on in my studio. So, anyways, we got that fixed. See, that's a good thing we didn't have Dr. Balls in here. We'd have to listen to me twice. Yeah, we're gonna have a good show. We're gonna be looking at some monsters and babes tonight, and maybe we'll get some health suggestions from the doctor. I don't know, but we're gonna find out right now.
That's right. Eat cheeseburgers. That's my health advice. Yes.
Well, it's literally we just started talking a couple minutes ago. So nice to meet you. Should I call you doctor or Jason, or how should I address you, sir?
No, you can call me Jason. It's kind of funny. So I came up with that name, Dr. Balls, as a homage to Professor Auguste Balls from the Pink Panther movies from the 80s. And I tell you, if I was involved, if I knew I was going to be so involved with comic books and being online and the CGC boards, I would have gave my username probably a little more thought than that. So I'm kind of stuck with it now. I've had it for, I don't know, 13, 14 years, and I've just, I can't change it. So I am stuck with Dr. Balls. But you can call me Jason.
Well, we'll probably, it's interchangeable. I think we can go with either one. But yeah, those monikers, they can stick with you for a long time. I mean, absolutely. I get it. But hey, so you're a fan of the Pink Panther? I mean, well, let's start the interview there.
Yeah, you can't beat Peter Sellers and Pink Panther. Man, I loved it when I was a kid, and I don't know, my mom must have liked it because that's how I got turned on to it, and it's hilarious, slapstick, and the whole thing, and it was just it's a fun throwback. I could still watch it, at 50, and probably laugh my ass off for half the movie still because it's just that entertaining. So it's one of those things that you connect with as a little kid, and it stays with you your whole life. And you go back to watch it, and you can experience that kind of that fun and that hilarity that you had, that you thought it was funny when you were 9.
Oh yeah, it's funny. I don't think I've seen one of the Peter Sellers Pink Panther movies in at least 20 years, but I love them every time they were on when I was a kid. I never missed one.
Oh yeah. It was a big event. I mean, right there was Star Wars and the Pink Panther movies. You couldn't wait.
Exactly. So I did wear the Crotch Goblin shirt. I don't know if you noticed that because of the name. I thought there was a correlation there, but clearly not. Now I know I should have worn my Pink Panther shirt.
Yeah. Yes.
So all right, well, let's dive into your history here of comic art collecting, man. So I know just from the few emails that we've had, you talked about owning a shop at one point, but how did you get involved with just the comics in general before, and then how did that lead into art?
Well, so when I was a little kid, and I think a lot of people start out like this when they're a kid, is that they get sick, and then mom brings home some comic books for you to read. Now, this is, the late 70s. And so there's not a whole lot of entertainment out there to keep your kid from going wild when he's home with a fever or whatever. And, my mom used to bring home like ROM and Battlestar Galactica and Star Wars comics and stuff. And so that got me into the format. And one of my friends down the street, he read Richie Rich and Little Hot Stuff and things like that. And that wasn't my thing. I kind of liked the comics that had a little bigger scope to them, bigger characters. And as I got older, I got into G.I. Joe, and then we moved from Great Falls, Montana to Denver. And my mom got transferred because she worked for Mountain Bell there. And that was kind of my first introduction to the real serious style of comics, because I moved next door to this guy, Greg Madison, and he was a couple years older than me. But he was into Daredevil, X-Men, Moon Knight, Master of Kung Fu, all those types of books that were really all very popular in the mid 80s. So this was, 1984, 1983, 1984. So there was really good stuff, and it was gritty. And, at that time I was only 10 or 11, but I thought, oh, I'm reading some really cool stuff and checking out Sienkiewicz art, and there was just a whole bunch of different stuff going on in that era of comics in the mid 80s. And so he introduced me to a lot of different stuff. He introduced me to Iron Maiden. He introduced me to Dungeons and Dragons and all these comics. And it was really cool because, you know, as a little kid, I was just dinking around and I was listening to like Michael Jackson records. And so it was like the right time to meet this guy who would give me so much influence. And he was only around for a couple years, but practically my entire personality is built off of the influence of this, 13-year-old dude that lived next door to me. And so that was kind of where I ended up, you know, in the 80s. And I don't know how many people listening have lived in Denver or live in Denver, but there was a really cool comic shop in Cinderella City. And that was a mall, I think in Lakewood, if I remember right. It was this huge mall, and there was like 3-story fountains. It was one of those malls that you kind of hear about now it was like an event to go there. It was just so massive. And they had a comic book shop down in this place called Cinder Alley, and it was all cobblestone bricks. And you go down there, and it's kind of like you're walking in some village in a D&D adventure. And it was really neat. And you go off, and there's a little lantern, you know, on the side of the entrance of the comic book shop. And so that was kind of my first comic book shop. I got introduced down there in Denver when I was a little kid. And I got to really be more involved with being able to look at back issues, because in Great Falls, we didn't have a comic book shop. You got everything off a news rack. So this was like, oh, you can buy like issues that you missed, and just you can buy like Wolverine #1 was $5 sitting on the wall, and that was, you know, to me that was huge money, because I think the Wolverine comic was, I don't know, 65 cents or 75 cents when it came out. So to think that you have to buy a comic book for $5 was just crazy when you got a, you know, $10 a week allowance. And so that was kind of Cinder Alley and that whole thing, and that carried me all the way through when I ended up moving back to Great Falls. And so just being a kid and doing different things, I kind of took a little hiatus from comic books and didn't get really back into it until I graduated high school around 1992. I got re-hooked on X-Men, and that was, right after, it was a little bit after X-Men 1 came out, and they split up into the two teams, and you had the X-Men Gold and the X-Men Blue, and you had all these comics, and all of a sudden X-Men was, it was still cool. The X-Men from the 80s translated into good read in the 90s. And so I got to get back into it and track down all the back issues. And, I had missed that period of time where Jim Lee was drawing on Uncanny, and I missed out on that. So getting back into that was really a lot of fun, and it influenced my desire to go to art school. I kind of was always going to go to art school, but that's when me and tons of people were probably interested in becoming comic book artists back in that era. And
we all wanted to be.
Yeah, I wanted to be, I wanted to be like Jim Lee. And then, you saw Rob Liefeld on commercials, and it was kind of very cool to go tell you didn't want to tell your parents you were going to art school. At least you didn't want to tell my parents that I was going to art school, because they were not happy. But it was kind of a cool time where you could go to art school, and you had this whole new area where you could focus on being an illustrator and getting into comics, because, man, they were just super hot in the 90s, especially the early 90s. They were just starting to ramp up. So it was that was a big influence, that whole era of X-Men. And so in about, 1994, I moved back to Denver. I kept kind of going back and forth because I was familiar there, and I went to move back and go to art school. And this is kind of an interesting CAF kind of story. Is when I moved down to Denver, I went to Mile High Comics in Buckingham Square Mall, and that's where I had my pull order. And there was this dude there, and he had submissions up on the wall. And I don't know if you remember when Wizard Magazine did kind of like they had a whole area where readers could submit like pinups and drawings, and they had like the little contests and stuff. Well, this guy he worked at this Mile High in Buckingham Square Mall, and he had some of his pictures up on the wall that had been published in Wizard, and I recognized him because like everybody else, we were huge Wizard fans back then. So I instantly knew this guy, and I thought, oh man, it was just really cool to meet a guy who, had his work published in Wizard, and it was really excellent artwork. And so he was there for a period of time, probably the whole time I lived there when I was going to school. And at the last Comic Art Live event, I came across a piece of work, a Lady Death pinup by a guy named Jack Gray. And it was the weirdest thing because I looked at it, I thought, I think that's that guy who had his stuff published in Wizard when I was, this was 30 some odd years ago. And it just like unlocked this crazy memory. So I sent him an email. I saw that he was active on CAF. So I sent him an email and said, hey, did you work at the mall at Buckingham Square Mall at Mile High? And he said, yeah, I worked there for a little bit. And so we just kind of had this little back and forth reminiscing of, the olden days and stuff. And he went on to work for Chaos Comics, and he did some stuff for Everett Hartsoe. And so he went off to do some comic art, and he's still an illustrator right now, but it was really kind of neat to track this guy down on CAF, which is one of the many things I like about the whole website and the way it works. So that was a fun interaction, just random. I mean, completely random.
Did you already have a CAF account when you contacted him, or did you?
Yeah, this was just last week.
Oh, literally last week.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, last week. Yeah. So I went 30 years not even thinking about this guy, and all of a sudden something popped up and it reminded me of his style of work. And I told him, I said, obviously you made such a huge impression on me at that age when I wanted to be an artist, and my brain burned his style into my memory, and I just remembered it after all those years, and I thought that was pretty neat. And it was also a testament to his style of work, which is it is very unique if you look up Jack Gray's art. So that was kind of a fun little aside to where I'm rambling on about my history of how I got into comics.
By Jack in your CAF gallery though yet, right?
What's that?
You don't own anything by him in your CAF gallery.
No, but I'm starting to look now that I remembered who he is, and now I can kind of track down some of his stuff. So I've been looking at it. Oh, everybody wants to know if I bought the piece. No, I didn't. It was black and white Lady Death, and so I'd kind of been going back and forth on it. I was trying to find a published piece of his, and I didn't know. I don't think he probably has any of his old Wizard illustrations. I hadn't got around to asking him if he did. I would love to have bought one of his old Wizard submissions, just because I know that was what he used to hang on his wall at the comic shop.
Yeah, I had to look up his account. I'll put the link in there so everybody can see.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, there you go.
When did he join? 2006. 18 years.
Yeah.
And still answering emails. That's good.
Yeah. He's a super nice guy. He was a super nice guy when I was just some young comic customer there at the shop that he worked. So very nice guy, and definitely recommend go checking out his stuff. But so this was 1994 when I was in college for illustration, and I was experimenting with comic styles. And if you go through a lot of my old drawings, because in school I wasn't able to really illustrate, do any sequential stuff. So I was mimicking different styles. Like I really like Jay Lee. Jay Lee is actually a big influence in my personal art, because I like his, his kind of slashy kind of style and ink going everywhere, and I really like that. But if I tried to mimic a bunch of different people's styles to figure out which direction I wanted to go. And then eventually I changed over to learning graphic design because I didn't want to get out of college and have to work a different job and then do, illustration on the side. I needed to pay for my college. So I switched over to something that would turn into a vocation. And that's where I started getting into graphic design. And so after I got out of college, I moved back to Montana, my hometown, and I couldn't find a job because I was trained on a lot of this modern equipment that Great Falls printers didn't have. And so I was in this kind of limbo trying to get a job, but there was no job openings for what I was doing. And so I ended up, that's when I thought, I'm like, okay, well, I've got to pay school loans. I got to do this. I got to figure things out. And I worked at a comic shop and I decided to open up my own comic shop. And that, it took about a year to put all that together and get back issues and do that whole thing. And that's where I really started not only getting into just the comic books, but that's when I was really looking at comic art and beyond me really doing it, thinking that I'm going to, be a comic artist. I kind of put that on the back burner. I thought, okay, I've got to eventually get a job in advertising. And so, but my appreciation really started growing for comic book art because it was like living vicariously through some of these people going, not saying that, oh, I could do this, but just appreciating what they do and how important the comic art medium is in terms of art. I always say that comic book art is almost a pinnacle of art style because you have to pull in different elements. You have to be able to tell a story. You have to be able to move the reader and their eye around the page. You have to understand light and dark balance. You have to be able, and this was back in the 90s where you had to work this stuff around the word bubbles. I mean, there was design elements, there was perspective elements. There's all these elements that come into play when you're a sequential comic artist. And I believe that's just I don't want to say superior form of art, but I really like how many components go into it to actually be a successful comic book artist. I think a lot of people maybe don't look at a lot of the requirements that go into that. And that's where my love of comic book art really came from, because I can appreciate all the different aspects that go into, creating a panel page of,
Sure.
if anything.
So what was the name of your shop?
The name of my shop was Gen X Comics and Collectibles, which is
Not Dr. B Comics and Collectibles, but Gen X. Yeah.
So yeah, it was. You think it back, I'm like, that's just kind of generic name, but the name actually came from I was a big fan of J. Scott Campbell, and Gen 13. The original title for Gen 13 was Gen X. And they had to change the title due to some, I think Marvel leaned on them legally out of confusion for creating something that's going to be close to an X-Men property. And so there's actually some promotional stuff out there marketing the Gen X comic books that turned into Gen 13. And I have one of those. I still have my poster that kind of inspired the name of my comic book shop. But that's how far back that I was just really impressed with his style, and just not only his style, but how young he was and how successful he was becoming as a comic book artist. I mean, that was all things that I thought were really cool about J. Scott Campbell and most of those image guys. I mean, they were all young and they were starting out and doing all these bold type of graphics and things with their comic books, and that was just kind of impressionable to me, and I wanted to tap into that a little bit with my own comic shop. But if you go on YouTube, I think you do a search for Gen X Comics and Collectibles, and you'll see I have 2 of my commercials out there from the 90s, and they are absolutely hilarious. in the terms of how 90s they really are. So I'll leave it at that, but it's worth doing a little search if you want to get a glimpse.
I might pull it up at some point throughout this. But so in your time, I don't know what the we know when you started. I don't know when you sold the shop or you closed it. But I mean, any art ever walked through the door? Did you ever host any signings there with any creators of note? I mean,
yeah. So I did. Because it's Great Falls, there was not a lot of people coming through Montana. There was no comic conventions or anything, but we did have a resident Marvel inker. His name is Mike Halbleib, and he worked on, he did some Marvel stuff. He produced his own Vortek the Wonder Mule. It was kind of an independent thing, an anthropomorphic comic book, which was all the rage back then. And so he came in and we did a signing, not only for his comic books, but he brought in a bunch of what if pages that he inked for Dan Panosian. And that we put a big display. And I mean, I was obviously enamored with that. Was probably the first time I'd ever seen original comic art. I didn't realize that they worked at such a large size and then reduced it down for the comic book format. And I thought that was unbelievable how cool that was, that everything was just so much bigger than a comic book page. And he did the showing. He brought some art to sell, and no one was really into buying the art. He sold, signed a bunch of books and things like that. Well, he had 4 pieces at that, and I bought them all, and I bought them for $50 a page, and they were really good. They were splash pages, or like half splash pages, and one had a couple team people on it, and 3 of them I hung on to, and they're still in my collection. So those are my 3 what if pages in my CAF, and that's those came from my comic shop, and I bought them right from Mike, and that was the only artist that ever came by my shop.
Well, I actually found the video, so I know let's play one. I haven't watched it yet, so it'll be interesting. Let's see here. I want to make sure I get the audio set up on it to work right. This window, yep, to share a tab instead of a screen. Okay, do it this way. There we go. All right, let's see here.
Oh yeah, here we go.
Hopefully everybody can hear this one. So from 1996, we're going back in the past here. Oh my goodness.
This is Gen X Comics and Collectibles, the next generation of the comic book specialty store. The hottest books in the country are here for you. X-Men, Spawn, Wildcats, Gen 13, plus the latest in non-sports cards, special orders, new comics weekly, and hundreds of back issues. Gen X has special discounts for military personnel and college students and features in-store specials on comics, t-shirts, cards, and specialty items every week. Gen X Comics and Collectibles is waiting for you at Westgate Mall.
Yes.
There's some production value in there. That wasn't your voiceover, though.
No,
right?
No, that was one of the voiceover talents at the TV station.
Yeah. All right. Well, we got 2 here now.
Yeah, the other one's a little variation on that. I think one was a grand opening video. Yeah,
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Oh, we get commercials.
Can it keep me warm when I'm cold?
Yeah.
Wait, no, I'm always hot.
That's YouTube. I do not have those monetized.
They got to make their money somehow.
Yeah.
Gen X Comics and Collectibles, the next generation of the comic book specialty store, is celebrating its grand opening this Saturday at Westgate Mall. Hundreds of dollars in grand opening giveaways will be handed out during this celebration. Gen X has the hottest books in the country, like X-Men, Spawn, Wildcats, Gen 13, plus the latest in non-sports cards, new comics weekly, and hundreds of back issues. Gen X also features in-store specials on comics, t-shirts, cards, and specialty items every week. Don't miss the grand opening of Gen X Comics and Collectibles this Saturday at Westgate Mall.
Oh, that was a fun time back then. It was, I was I was like 23, and all I had to worry about was paying rent and coming up with enough beer money to go to the bar after I closed the shop. And it was cool. There was a janitor there at that mall that was really pretty cool. So I would go. I had two other jobs when I had my comic shop. So if I worked one or the other, and then I'd work my shop, which was open kind of during the day, and then late at night I would come and sort comics and price stuff out. Well, this guy would let me rollerblade around the mall. I just cranked the music. I was the only person in the mall, and so he'd let me kind of do that. He'd just say, as long as those wheels don't make any marks on the floor, you're fine. And so I'd go take a break every half hour, 45 minutes, go rollerblade around the mall, and it was great. No mortgage, no retirement program. You didn't have to worry about any of that. You just had to worry about, selling enough Batman and Wolverine books to buy a couple, rounds of beer at night is all the stress I had back then.
Well, at least you weren't drinking before you were rollerblading through the mall.
Yeah. Splattered all over the fountain down the hall from where my comic shop was.
So how does this all lead into art collecting, though?
I was gonna say, I apologize. Comics and comic art kind of ebb and flow through my life. All this. Mm-hmm. So, over the years, I started picking up little pieces of artwork, but being in Montana, you're real limited on where you can buy or where you can go. I mean, of course there's eBay and stuff like that, but it's not like you can go to a convention very easily. And so, the years went by and I started picking up stuff, and, you'd mentioned, if you see on my CAF, that I've been a member since 2012, and I was collecting artwork in addition to comic books back then. And so I had some nice pieces. And in 2015, my wife and I decided to open a restaurant. And so to fund the restaurant, which is always, I enjoy telling people that my restaurant, I opened it by selling off my comic books and comic book art. And that's what opened our restaurant. And so I sold everything at auction, sold comic books on the CGC boards, and we funded the restaurant, but I had to let go of every single piece of artwork that I had in my CAF. And when you get to the Gonzalo Mayo piece, I'll have a little story about that. But I had to sell everything off. And so my gallery was empty up until about 2 years ago. I decided to get back into it. I was collecting Golden Age comics, and I'd been doing that for a few years. And I thought, I kind of want to get back into the comic art thing. I miss it. I miss enjoying looking at all the work. And so I started getting back into it, delving back into it. But I thought I needed to really have a focus, because my old collection, I was kind of all over the place. I was kind of, buying this or buying something I like. And, everybody does that. And so I really wanted to hone in on something so I didn't just have a mishmash of things. And so that's when I started getting into the 90s bad girl stuff, because that was kind of my favorite time of owning my comic book shop. And I kind of made a connection to a lot of these great talented artists that were just starting out in the 90s, and they were on independent comics, and they hadn't quite made a name for themselves, but they were definitely going somewhere. And it's fun to track down old pieces like that. And real quick, I just wanted to go back. There was a time I lived in New York City, and I was doing freelance artwork there. And I was able to go to the New York Comic Con back in 2008. And that's where I got to meet a bunch of creators, and I picked up some sketches, and that was kind of got me on the road a few years before my first foray into, picking up stuff and being on CAF and doing a gallery. And I got to, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of John Tarani's YouTube series, America's Bad Kids. And it was something back in around that time, around 2008. But he was a buddy of mine that I worked with in New York. And one day he was going around interviewing comic artists, and his cameraman got sick. So I got to actually run the camera while he did these videos of interviews, and I got to meet like Ben Templesmith and Jim Steranko and Eric Powell and Steve Dillon, and we got to go around and kind of do that, and that really kick-started a lot of that desire to pick up art and look at art again as a hobby.
So what were some of the noteworthy pieces that you had to let go of to open the restaurant? And Rick Welch wants to know what the name of the restaurant is.
So my wife and I, we have the Roadhouse Diner, and it's in Great Falls, Montana. You can find it online, and we're mainly a burger joint. We've got best burgers in Montana, and that's thankfully what other people say. I'm not saying it; other people say that about us, so I feel very proud of that. And we use local beef from a ranch that's just a few miles away from where we live, and so that's kind of our thing, and that's what we do for our business is we run that restaurant. And then, but going back to, I'm sorry, what was the question you were asking me about?
Noteworthy artworks that you
yeah, the artworks I had to part with. I had a couple really nice John Buscema Thor pages that they weren't quite half splash, but they were 6 and like a 6 and a 5 panel. One with Hela on it, which was a really nice piece that I liked because I loved his rendition of Hela. Very Jack Kirby-ish because he worked in the Marvel method, and a lot of Miss Marvel stuff. I had a couple Miss Marvel pages. I'm still a big Miss Marvel fan. I had a page from Jim Mooney. I had a nice. It was unpublished where it was supposed to be, but it ended up, I think, in an Avengers book by Mike Vosberg with Mystique on there, I think, and Miss Marvel and a big skull. I think it's on Comic Art Fans somewhere because I ran across. I'm like, oh, I missed that piece, and yeah, I look back and I do what nobody should ever do is, if you still have like a Comic Link account, like don't ever look back at what you sold something for 15 years ago because you want to punch yourself in the face. And I'm like,
I've never sold anything on Comic Link. So they provide you access to all your sold consignment history.
Yeah. So you can go back to, your previous auctions, like things you sold, and you can see stuff you sold years and years ago. And I'm just like, oh boy, I can't believe it. I mean, I had a Frank Brunner Red Sonja cover, a newer one, not one of his vintage ones, but a newer penciled cover. And I had a Simon Bisley, a really neat Vampirella commission, and just really nice stuff that is kind of funny because I look back and I go, yeah, if I'm pretty sure I would have hung on to it. You can always say, I got things and I probably would have sold them off and everything else. But I was picking artwork back then the way I pick it now is that I look at it and there's there's stuff you obviously get rid of, but there's things that you connect with that you like, and they end up on your wall forever.
That's true. That is very true. Well, I went through the same thing. I opened up a business, sold off most of my art, so I can sympathize with having to go through that. But you still own the restaurant. So there's no regret there. It was a good financial decision for us, and everything's working out great. The restaurant runs well, and I don't feel bad about having to make that sacrifice because you have to make sacrifices when you do that. So that was something that was it was bittersweet, but you're like, okay, well, I'll start collecting again, and now you start collecting different stuff. Sure. Now, I have to half expected to see a typewriter behind you because and it is a typewriter. I haven't had one of these in a while, but I see all the O's are all punched out on this thing. And got to. So what's up with that? Where is it? I figured
it's in my other room. I had to kind of move some things around, and it's in my other room next to my big printer. And yeah, whenever I have to write someone correspondence, I'll punch it up on the typewriter most times, because it's just kind of a fun little thing to go back to, and be a little retro. That's kind of my style.
Well, is this a rubber stamp on the top there with the skull, or is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually experimented with. I wanted to do a little letterhead, for correspondence. I had some letterhead printed, and it just didn't have that rubber stamp kind of feel. So I ended up getting a rubber stamp, and I ink it, and I do the thing. So it's one of those things where you spend 10 or 15 minutes writing a letter instead of typing it out and printing it out, and it's there's a place for that too. But sometimes I like to add a little personalization. So that's the rubber stamp and the typewritten letter.
Do you have to like stock up on the typewriter ribbons, or is there a place that still manufactures?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a place that still manufactures. It was crazy that I found it. And yeah, I can still buy ribbon. I actually bought some for that typewriter when I got it, and it's a typewriter from, I don't know, 1950.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm impressed. I'm glad to see there's still in use. So okay, so you had that hiatus when you're starting the business, but what was the thing that triggered you getting back into it? I mean, did you go to a show? Did you pick up a comic and you realized, I'd like to get back into art? I mean, what was that trigger point that that brought you back into it, or were you always still buying comics, or at least staying close to the hobby and the fun of comics while you were still on the business?
The first year and a half of the business, it was just like panic, and you don't know what's going on, especially a restaurant. You're afraid to spend anything on anything. And so it took about a year and a half for me to get comfortable and go, I kind of miss comic books. And I had a record collection, and I thought, maybe I'll sell my records and I'll get back into comics. And then I started doing that, and I really got back into comics because I forgot how much I missed them. And so I started getting back into that, and then I started getting those feelings about the comic book art. And I thought, well, maybe I'll delve around and pick up a few things here and there. And I bought a couple pieces just because I thought I got a good deal on them, and I did get a good deal on them because nobody wanted them. And so I started going through that, and I have a lifelong dream to eventually put out my own comic book. And that's something that I look forward to when I have time to focus on it. And I really enjoy not only drawing, but with my advertising, my design experience, I can print it. I know how to print it. I know all the stuff. I know all the components. I have pretty good penmanship. I actually want to learn how to letter. And so I just thought it'd be kind of fun to someday be able to get into creating a comic book, and it could sell 10 copies for all I care. It's just I really look forward to challenging myself by practicing and learning sequential art and doing that. And it's not something that happens in a year, but I always have this dream that I'll have enough time to do that. That's away from the restaurant and away from the daily stressors and things. And hopefully by the time I get to that point, my eyesight is still okay. But having that desire really got me back into wanting to collect original art again. And so one of the things that it's hard for me to do is to collect the same thing twice. Before the restaurant, I was really into Silver Age and Bronze Age stuff, Marvel stuff, and I thought I don't want to go back and like rebuy all the comics I sold. And so I started getting into Golden Age and things like that, which is, that's a pricey genre to be in. And so when I decided to get back into comic art, I decided that, I wasn't going to get back into some of the superhero 70s, 80s stuff like that. And I mean, I was coming back in, 2021, 2022, where everything was just insanely priced. Like my Thor pages I got rid of, I mean, went up in value like by a factor of 8. So I couldn't even I couldn't even get into that realm again. So that's when I really started figuring out what genre I wanted to be in, and that mid 90s indie bad girl scene had some appeal to me. It had a lot of appeal to me because I enjoy it, but it wasn't, it's not like I'm looking for 90s Jim Lee X-Men pages, so I could actually get back into the hobby and not be, having to mortgage my house for a piece of artwork. And that's what I wanted to do. I mean, I wanted to be able to buy artwork and have fun and enjoy it without, breaking the bank, which is, is tough to do in 2022.
It certainly is. I mean, yeah, you came right back at the worst time possible as far as pricing goes.
Yeah.
2020 is when
No kidding.
it started going crazy. Yeah. Well, I mean, but what you found a niche that, I mean, where the art is still, great to look at. It's it's well done. Lots of important artists that have worked in bad girl artwork. And the thing is, they're still affordable. I mean, there's a lot of artwork that's still, but those Buscema Thors, though, you're not getting those back. I mean, I don't even have a Buscema Thor page. I love Thor, but any of the good pages are going to run you, $6,000-8,000 if you really want to get something nice with Hela and Thor on it. You're going to be arm wrestling at least 2 dozen other collectors that are interested in that page.
Yeah.
So it's a different market.
Yeah, those 2 pages were really kind of fun. They were like I said, they were panel pages, but man, they just had some great trademark Thor dialogue and poses and everything. And I look back on them, I'm like, oh boy, I can't imagine what those would go for, now, because they're not splash pages, but they had everything that counts if you want a Buscema page.
Mm-hmm. Well, why don't we start looking at some of the artwork then?
Yeah, perfect.
I even rounded it back up to 18. I threw 4 in at the end.
Cool.
Things I picked out of your CAF gallery, and the link to your CAF is in the description for the show. But I can go ahead and copy the link and throw it in the chat so everybody has the chance to browse your CAF gallery during and after the show, because they should definitely check out the artwork and leave some good comments for you, maybe through a few likes as well.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Oh, your wife wouldn't let you do a reverse mortgage?
Yeah, no. What's really interesting is the past 2 weeks, 2 really nice Jim Lee pages came out that's in my kind of my collecting focus, a Dark Child cover and a Grifter She cover. Mm-hmm. And of course the Grifter She one is just gorgeous, but I'm like, okay, that is comfortably outside of my price range that I can go, yeah, I can't do that one. And then the Dark Child one showed up, and it's still in my browser window, and I keep looking at it every day, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't afford that one either. And I keep talking to my wife like, well, if we could sell this and do that, and she's like, we're not buying an $11,000 piece of artwork. And I'm like, okay, well, I get it. I can't quite stretch it. And I'm very fortunate. I have a Jim Lee cover from 2006, and I'm super thankful that I got that. But this Dark Child one is really a favorite of mine, and it just, it stings when you get one of those and it's just outside your grasp.
We all understand.
Oh, yeah.
It's tough, but sometimes you have to know your limits. Where you can cut yourself off at, and having a spouse that knows what your limits are.
Yeah, she lets me play a little fast and loose, but there's definitely a cap there, and that's okay. That's you need a little bit of that too.
Yeah, no, I get that. That's hey Gu, I don't know what's wrong with you. Maybe refresh your browser and all that stuff will pop back up. But the thing is, like you just said, the thing you've got the tab still open with the artwork. You're still going back to it, thinking about it. You're trying to figure out if there's a possibility there to make it work. But I'm
punishing myself.
Dino apparently has seen it. He said the Jim Lee Dark Child pinup was sweet. So.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. And it's a babe and a monster, and that's my that's my theme. So
the bookends right there for you.
yeah, right there. It'd be perfect. It'd be perfect.
Well, let's see here. Let's dive in. I think the first piece was a Joyce Chin artwork, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah. So this one was a fun one to just discover and pick up, because this was the Barbie Twins calendar from 1996, which featured pinups from all sorts of popular artists at the time, and it was really a high point in like the absurdity of the bad girl comic marketing machine that was the mid 90s, when you have these two Playboy models who absolutely have nothing to do with comic books show up in a Barbie Twins calendar of illustrations. And so this is one of my favorite pieces in terms of this really represents kind of, some people won't like what the 90s represent, but this is definitely what the 90s were all about, and that's kind of why I enjoy having this piece. Plus Joyce's work is phenomenal in this era. I mean, her hair, her styling of her hair and ink work and stuff is just really at the top of her game in this. When she was doing she did pinups like this, I think she was working on Warrior Princess at the time, and her work is just phenomenal in this era. So this is a fun piece to own.
Now, was this a CAF pickup, or did you pick this up at auction? How did you find this one?
I want to say I think I picked it up off of eBay.
Uh-huh.
This is one I picked up a few years ago. I'm a little fuzzy on some of them where they came from, but I think this was eBay.
Well, it's very nice. I've always liked Joyce's work, and I was thinking the same thing. Barbie Twins doesn't get more 90s than that. I mean, every 16-year-old boy in the 90s knew who the Barbie Twins were. So
yeah, Topps had it figured out. They could get the
Yep.
comic nerds, and then they could get the younger brothers of the comic nerds.
That's so true. Let's see here. Yeah, everything's better with twins, says Marcus. Of course. He's been around the block a few times. Let's see here. So what was the other? Well, we got a couple other pieces here to look at, and then I'll come back to our interview.
Oh yeah,
this one.
Yeah, this is a cover by Joe Benitez from 1995. It's for a comic book called Cinder from Immortal Studios, I think is the publisher. And this comic book, I don't even really remember any of the backstory about the character, but I do remember these guys were kind of tied into Bill Tucci and Joe Benitez, and I think they were one of these comic book publishers that were right around that, that whole era where indie stuff was super popular, and variants, and everybody was kind of in that mix, and everybody was kind of friends and buddies, and they were doing pinups for each other and things. And this is one of the covers I really enjoy because it signifies that camaraderie of those independent artists back then, before they kind of went off to Image. And at the time, I think Billy Tucci was doing She, and that was starting to pick up, and they all kind of stayed connected with each other and helped each other out when someone had a new book or a new idea that they were trying to put out. But this is a cover of Joe Benitez, whose art I really liked, and I really, really liked his work on Weapon Zero when he was over at Image. But this cover in particular was really annoying when it came out, because when it came out, they did this sideways cover. So what you're looking at is you're looking at a vertical, and you'd think, oh, that's the cover, but it's not. You'd have to turn it sideways, and then they folded it, so you were looking at the girl sideways like this. And so if you wanted to see the whole image, you'd have to open it up, and look at it like a Playboy centerfold. And it stuck with me when I bought this book in the 90s, and it was in my shop, and I thought, what dumbass did their orientation like this to this beautiful cover? It's a gorgeous cover. And yeah, so I think I have a picture there. Yeah, so that's what it looks like on the newsstand, and that's if you turn it sideways. So if you rotate that, it makes absolutely no sense. And it was a variant cover that they did. But when I saw this piece of artwork on a dealer website, it just said "Fiery Hands Girl Unpublished Pinup," and I saw it and I thought, that's not a pinup, that's a cover. And I bought it immediately. And I don't remember what I paid for it. I know I didn't pay a cover price for it. And
Well,
I couldn't wait to
Fiery
get it.
Hands Girl price. I don't know
Yeah.
what that is, but
Yeah, it was just like that's how they described it. They described it as it was unpublished and fiery hands. And I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna
I
make
was
out on
thinking
this
it
one.
was Anthony as well. Was it Anthony? It could have been.
Yeah, yes, it was. It
All
was
right.
Anthony. God bless. God
Yes.
bless him.
Scott Wingo, we're all thinking the same thing. Yeah, no, that's. I mean, I
Yeah.
see those descriptions on Anthony's site today. I mean, at least he tries. Because the thing is, he's the guy that gets the most obscure stuff, and that's the other reason
Yeah.
why I said it was with him as well, because for that very same reason, he really. I don't know where he gets it, but when people want to sell something, they bring it to Anthony. So he gets stuff like this all the time.
I cruise his site once a week just to look for this obscure 90s stuff because I'm fortunate enough to have a pretty good memory of a lot of this crazy stuff from back then. And I can look at a piece and go, I'm pretty sure that's, published or that's somewhere. And then I have to rummage around and go online and look for things and stuff like that. But I love the research part of comic book art collecting. That's one of my favorite things that I enjoy doing is doing research. And what's kind of funny about Dueling Dealers is I would see something and I'm like, I know I've seen that somewhere. And, I kind of have a little personal rule. Like unless it really sticks out, I don't like to buy an unpublished piece of artwork unless it just really hits me. And so I'll be trying to do research while the show's going. So I'll have another window open because I got my two screens and I'm looking and I'm scrolling back, in the video to get a picture of it. And I've lost out on a couple pieces because I was busy researching. And by the time I get back, someone's nabbed it up. There was Berkey had a really nice Kyle Holtz cover for Mantis, I think. Anyway, really great Angel cover. And I was in the middle of doing my research. I was checking out stuff and he sold it and it's gone. And it was a gorgeous cover of an angel and wings. And it just I just couldn't get my research done quick enough on that one that I wanted to do. And so that was my most recent kind of one. I'm like, oh, damn it. But anyway, going back to the Benitez piece, that was a nice pickup because I knew what it was, but I don't think those other guys kind of knew. And it's tough if you don't have a recollection. I mean, you're not going to go to try and navigate through all these obscure, bizarre 1990s bad girl characters. You wouldn't be able to find it. So that's also kind of the fun in my collecting genre is that I get to have fun tracking things down like that. Oh, I lost your sound.
Nope, you're right. I have a shortcut key to put a mute on, and it went mute on me. I just said Anthony. He has sold a few. He sold a few covers that he didn't know were covers in the past, even on other shows that we've been on. So it's kind of a trademark of his, but it's all good because he ends up being happy and he gets some art out there that otherwise.
Well, yeah, and he's got me for a customer that always comes back, and I'm sure everybody feels that way. And I mean, it's just that's what's fun about Anthony's way he sells and his website. So.
Well, very nice. But I think we're going to look at another piece of art by Benitez too, right?
Yeah.
Let's see what-
So this is the Darkness 14. It's the page one splash from 1998. And this is where Joe Benitez and Joe Weems, boy, his inks are just amazing on this. And it's a really cool piece when you're looking at it on screen. And this is one of those pieces that is phenomenal when you're looking at it in person. And I mean that, I know that doesn't mean much to anybody not looking at it in person, but I was blown away when I opened up this piece of artwork, and the detail is just unreal. And it's just another one of those. I'm very proud to own this piece by Benitez, because I can't seem to find a whole lot of Weapon Zero pages that I want to, that have what I want on them. But this one's a great placeholder until I can someday come across a Benitez Weapon Zero page, which, if anybody's familiar with that comic, it was really kind of cool back then, because he was doing girls with face tattoos, and they were all sexy, and they were kind of his style of illustration for women is that he draws them very aloof. So they're all just, they're kind of looking off and doing this thing. And it's really a neat particular style of Joe Benitez that I kind of like, and what really connected me with the Weapon Zero stuff. And so every now and again, I see one of his pieces, and I'd been looking at this piece, I don't know, a year. Tatiana had it on her website. She had it on her website for a long time, and it was one of those pieces like the Dark Child. I kept it in my tab for weeks until I just said, I'm not going to go for it. And I, turn off. And then a few months later, I'd be looking through her website, and I'd see that piece again. I'd put it up in a tab, and I'd look at it for a while. And then we, probably a year or so later, I ended up doing a deal with her on getting this piece. And man, I would have bought it sooner if I'd known what it looked like in hand. It's just an unbelievable piece of artwork.
So you were doing research and thinking about it, and you almost could have lost out again. It's how it goes, though. But this is Tatiana has an affinity for this kind of era of work too. So I'm sure she enjoys working with Benitez to kind of get this work out there. But yeah, this is beautiful, man.
Yeah, this is one of my favorites, and it was knowing what I know now, I would have been heartbroken if this thing would have just got picked up and disappeared.
Yep, but we all know that feeling. We've talked about it on here. Like I look at art sometimes on dealer sites for a couple of years, and it almost feels like you own it by the time you get introduced to it.
Yeah.
Almost you have to buy it in order to break the curse, or you get disappointed. Like in year 3, it finally gets sold, and you're like, I felt like mine for so long. But yeah, I know how that goes. But let's see here. What do we got? I know this one was a Jim Mooney piece, right? And I don't remember what it was from. It was from an Elvira book, right?
Yeah. So it was from one of the Claypool Comics Elvira's. It's John Hebink is the penciler, and Jim Mooney, I think, did the finishes or did the inks. I can't quite remember. But this is another one that was a really nice piece to unbox, because she is just maxed out on the page, and I mean that in every sense of the word. She is just from top to bottom, and it's just this massive pinup. And this is it's like 11.5 by 17.5, so it's got a little extra ½ inch to make her even more majestic than she is. And it's just a fun piece. And Elvira stuff for me is again kind of sentimental, because I used to watch her obviously without my mother's permission when I was like 6 or 7 years old, and watching horror movies and having her introduce these horror movies. And she was just such a character even in the 80s that it just kind of went with me. And of course her body style is timeless. So I've got a soft spot in my heart for the Claypool Elvira stuff.
Well, we know that the Babes and Monsters thing it started at an early age, at least 6.
Yeah.
Thanks to
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
and her hosted shows. Yes, we get it. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Now the one thing, if you take a look at this, and this is what I used to watch Mystery Science Theater, but only passively, like when it like came on and I was at home in the middle of the day while I was in just out of college. And so there's a character on this page that looks like one of the dudes from Mystery Science Theater. And I don't know if this guy came first that's on the page, or if Mystery Science Theater is an homage to this guy, the guy with the bird beak. I don't know if anybody is a Mystery Science Theater fan, but I don't know if that guy is some sort of similarity to that. I have no idea how to research where that
Mystery Science Theater was out in the late 80s, so I would assume because this was what, like mid 90s, I think.
Yeah.
95. I'm looking at
95.
Your CAF Gallery, yeah. So they were it was a little homage back to Mystery Science Theater. So yeah, that's a bonus.
Yeah. I thought that was kind of cool. I can't remember that little character's name, but yeah, it was cool. This is a neat Elvira page for me.
Very nice. Now over to something a bit more colorful by Gonzalo Mayo.
Yeah, so I told you I had a story about this particular one, so I'll try to keep it short. So this Gonzalo Mayo, speaking of Anthony, I bought this from Anthony. Oh, geez, back in 2013 maybe, and Anthony was just a gem in dealing with me because this was my most expensive piece of artwork that I bought. And I think Anthony wanted $1,500 for it. And I think I got him down to $1,250. And I talked to him on the phone. I mean, it was just, it was that comfort level of spending that kind of money. Cause I don't think I had spent over $800 or $900 on a piece of artwork at that point in my collecting life. And so this painting is huge. It's I'm looking at it here on my wall. It's damn near 18 by 24. It is a massive painting. And the reason that I think Anthony had it marked down so inexpensively is that Gonzalo had commissioned this to somebody, and it's really unfortunate. Somebody rolled it up and like stuck it under their bed, and it got squished. So there was like, when you squish a poster and then you unroll it and you've got the creases in there. So this thing had some creases and some damage inside of it. It was just treated very poorly at one point. And so I think Anthony got this from somebody and, was trying to sell it. But anyway, he was very nice in dealing with me, and I got the painting, and it was this was the pride and joy of my collection because it's got Red Sonja, it's Gonzalo. It was made in 2007, but it's got that feel like it came from the 80s, and I think that's what I really liked about it. It was super vibrant. It's like oils and acrylics, so it really pops. The blacks are super deep. It's got all sorts of cool things going on with it. So anyway, fast forward to when I sold everything to fund my restaurant, I sold this. And when I said that, I don't have any regrets about my art or anything else of parting with it with the restaurant, this is the one piece I thought, man, I wish I would have hung on to this piece. It was just, it broke my heart that I got rid of it. And I know that for some people, it's just like, oh, it's just a piece of artwork. But this one, it made me feel good. I had it in my studio, and I just look at it every day, and it was gone. And so after probably a year and a half or 2 years into the restaurant, I thought, I'm going to get a hold of Jason Crosby over at Comic Link, who that's where I sold it, and see if he could reach out to the buyer and I'd make him an offer on it. And so without any numbers, I offered twice as much as what this guy bought it for. And he said, no, he's going to hang on to it. And Jason Crosby was always very gracious in doing that for me. But this went on for 7 years. Every year, every
offer.
Yeah, every year, about if anywhere from October, because sometimes I had this mentality like, oh, maybe he needs Christmas money. So I would send an offer in October, and I would add a little bit more to the price. And the guy, he passed, and this went on forever. And on the 7th year, I think the 7th year, I offered, like 5 times what he bought it for. And with everything going on in the art world and, prices, everything went up. I thought, oh my God, I'm never going to see this piece of artwork because my big dog 5 times offer, is practically like market value now after what happened in 2020. So I sent in the offer, and then, like a week later, I got an email back from Jason, and he said the seller will accept the buyer will accept your offer. And I didn't even tell my wife. So I never told my wife that I was even doing this, because they never answered. So I'm like, I'm 5 times the offer. What the hell? I mean, I was just throwing numbers out there. And she was in the bathroom doing her hair when I told her. And I mean, I was ecstatic. I'm bouncing all over the place. I'm like, oh, we gotta get my artwork back. And she just looks at me and she says, you spent what on a piece of art? I said, I don't care. This one, the diner's buying back for me. And so that was a huge moment for me. And it was it really, from a personal aspect, it was one of those things where it reminds me not only of the sacrifice we made to get the restaurant, but also it kind of showed that we had reached this point of being a successful restaurant, that I could buy it back. And so it's really a special piece. It's my favorite piece. I told my wife, I said, this piece goes in the grave with me. It will never sell. And I know everybody likes to say, oh, I'll never sell that piece, or I'll never do that. But every now and again, and people know this, that you have that one piece, and it will literally go to the grave with me. I will never part with this piece. I love it. I love the story behind it. It makes me feel good. I look at it every day when I come into my office. It's my favorite. So I'm really thankful, and it's got a little history with me, and it's just a fun piece, and it's a super great Gonzalo piece. I mean, it's cool.
Once you framed it up, did the creases and stuff get harder to see, or I mean, it's
yeah. So I'm looking at it. I mean, you really have to get up on it to frame it, and that was actually one of the things that the guy I sold it to. He put a beautiful frame in it, and he put non-glare glass. I mean, he spent some money on the framing. And so Comic Link actually shipped it to me frame, and I didn't even know that was part of the deal. So I opened this thing up, and I'm like, oh my God, it's like ready to go on the wall. And it looks beautiful. You really have to come up on it to see those creases and cracks in the paint, but it's gorgeous. And as a side note, when I first owned this piece, I was emailing Dynamite Comics, trying to. I took a high res. I had a DSL camera. I can't remember. It was a Canon. It was a nice camera, but I took really nice photos of it, and I retouched all the folds and everything. And then I did a mock-up of a Red Sonja from Dynamite Comics. And I was trying to pitch them because at this time, the first time I owned it, Gonzalo was still alive. And I thought, man, this would be a cool variant cover for you guys. I mean, they do variant covers of all sorts of stuff. They do photo variant covers and everything. I'm like, oh, this would be perfect. This is a cool Red Sonja cover. And I got a little traction from a gal there, but it just kind of petered out. And then when I got it back, I think I sent a blind email to Nick about hey, you should use this cover as a variant. And I thought, I'm like, I don't think it wouldn't obviously be as easy now with Gonzalo. He's dead now, so I don't think that's very easy to track down how to get permission for that. But that was always kind of a dream. Like that's a variant cover worthy piece of Gonzalo's.
I agree. Guys in the chat are saying, because one of the people, I sold like 5 John Byrne X-Men pages when I built my miniature golf course. And the thing is, I get to look at one whenever I want because it's in Dino's CAF Gallery. It's so for those of you.
What era of Byrne X-Men?
I always forget the issue number. That was from like 131, 132.
Oh wow,
somewhere in that area. It's it was a very memorable page. You get Wolverine claws out and everything. It's fantastic. But I get to get whenever I feel a little sad, I go look at Tina's Gallery and see that one. No, it was I think it was from it was one of the Proteus. So it would have been 127, right? 127, maybe 126. I forget.
Yeah.
Either way, Dino's not giving that one back.
But
anymore.
You can't beat it.
Right, but it shows you how the market changed a lot. I mean, even when I sold it, I probably bought it for like $3,500 in 2004 or something like that, and I probably sold it for double that. And by 2007, it's just that now it's probably 10 times that. It's easily 10 times that. It's probably 12 times that.
But it's kind of fun being able to say that you owned one of those, those pages, and we're younger compared to some of the older guys who owned Jack Kirby pages in the 80s. I mean, it's kind of fun to say you had that in your portfolio at one time.
Oh yeah. Sort of fun. I won't even. But let's see. What do we got next? Because I forget what the next piece is. Here we go. This is Tommy Castillo.
From Harry Carey, who was Harry Carey was a character from that was in her own series of comic books from Blackout Comics, and Blackout Comics was one of the tail end of those kind of fly-by-night independent comic book publishers that came about, and they were really trying to. They had She that was doing really well at the time, and they were doing polybagged comics and comics with interactive CDs, and they were doing action figures, and they tried to grab a little bit of this and a little bit of that of what everybody else was doing, but it never. The comic company, I think, only lasted 2 or 3 years before it folded up, but it had 2 really good artists. Tommy Castillo and Guy Dorian were 2 artists that worked for Blackout. And what I found interesting is that the amount of effort and work and craftsmanship that Tommy, and then we don't have a Guy Dorian piece in here, but those 2 artists put so much detail in the promotional materials of the Harry Carey stuff. It's almost night and day compared to the covers and the inside artwork from those comic books. So this is a piece that was a poster and a postcard and used in all sorts of promotional stuff. And it's got actually a wonderful tone to it, but the amount of detail and ink work on it is really pretty amazing for this independent artist. And Tommy's not with us anymore. I can't remember when he died, but he put out a pretty good body of work, and his I don't know if widow's the right term, or if it's his ex-wife, I can't remember, but she's out there doing her own artwork, and which looks great, and she's kind of keeping his name alive. Which is pretty neat, but he was a really talented artist that focused on a lot of that bad girl genre, and I don't think he ended up doing anything much after that. Mute. Mute. Can you hear me, Bill? Hello? Am I lost? Am I stuck in the internet? Okay, you guys can hear me? Oh, all right. No problem. I'm here. Well, I'll keep talking. Do you guys want to throw something in the chat? I can answer any questions. All right, taking over. Okay, so let me hear from the chat. Anybody got any favorite 90s bad girl stuff that they have a guilty pleasure in enjoying? Montana's very nice right now. Everything's greening up. We got a lot of rain. The creek's really high by our house, which would normally make me a little nervous, but we're on the tail end of rain. So we shouldn't see too much rising at the creek. My favorite 90s babe. Oh, see, somebody nailed Evangeline. She is Evangeline's one of my favorites that I actually am criminally underrepresented in my collection. I've been trying to find a really nice Evangeline page or pinup, and I think Evangeline always had some really great artists working on her, and I think that a lot of those pinups are coveted and locked up in collections because I have not seen a lot of Evangeline for sale. I do not serve Rocky Mountain oysters at the Roadhouse, but I know people that love to eat them. I am a Trekker, not a Trekkie. Yes, Star Trek Next Gen. I don't manscape. I'm too old for manscaping. And I live in Montana. When I lived in New York, I love to manscape. Oh, I think we got Bill back. I'm not getting any audio though. Yes, if you're in Montana, swing by the Roadhouse. Definitely. Oh. Okay, so we still can't hear Bill. Femforce is great. Bill Black, love his artwork. I've got a few Bill Black pieces. I actually have a Bill Black piece for my wife that's hanging in her office. Bill Black is great. Oh, hello. Yes, I will trade food for art. 100%. Oh, yeah, I can't tilt my camera because my mayo is way over there. Well, I don't know. Let's see. Oh, maybe I can. There we go. There's the mayo right there. Everybody see that? Yep. I like it right there so I can see it every time I sit at my desk. There we go. I was in New York City. I lived in the Bronx. I was there for from late 2007 to like early 2000, late 2008. I was there for about a year and a half doing freelance. I worked for a lot of horror movie producers, guys like in Fangoria, really low budget stuff, but I enjoyed working with them. I did package design for movies.
I'm back.
Hey, all right.
Yeah, man. There was like a power surge here. Everything went black. and now I'm back. So hey, there's a first for everything. I don't think I've had that happen during a live interview in a long time.
Yeah. Well, I hope I entertained it at least a little bit.
Well, it seems like you did rather well. You kept everybody happy, so I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
We
Sorry.
got a great audience. They're asking me all sorts of questions. Creeping Death is my favorite Metallica song, especially live versions. I love all the different live versions as much as Metallica fans are annoyed by having to always hear a live version of Creeping Death, but I love them all.
Yeah, well, I don't know anything about Creeping Death, unfortunately. But yes, everybody was hoping for a Dr. Balls show. I see that now. Maybe a once a month show.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, we talk about hamburgers and heavy metal and comic art.
Uh-huh. And look, Jason's, he's the artist is giving you a thank you for the shout out at the beginning of the interview.
Is this who's that?
Gray, Mr. Gray, right?
Oh, is that Jack?
It looks like the image from his CAF
Cool.
profile.
Yeah, absolutely.
There we go. All right, well, let's get back to this thing, man. I am sorry.
That's all right.
I was actually worried that the slide was on here, and you weren't able to be seen on camera, and you didn't know I was gone. So I'm glad that that worked out. But I was trying to find some other work by Guy Dorian from that same book, because you do have a few pieces in your CAF gallery, obviously. So if people want to head over there at some point.
There's a really nice Guy Dorian piece in there that I actually lost on the auction. I got just beat, and I was I wanted that piece of artwork, and for 2 days I sat and thought, I'm going to offer this guy more because it was on Heritage, and I ended up making an offer on it, and he took it, which, he's probably like, I can flip this thing for a couple $100 like right now. And so I ended up buying it, but I felt satisfied, and I'm 100% sure I overpaid for it. But it was worth it in my book, just to nail it.
Cool. So you're going to OAX in 2025? Is that what you said while I was away?
I don't know. It's really hard for me to get away with the restaurant.
That is true. True.
I would love to go to OAX. I saw the pictures. I saw, people doing reviews and all the experiences everybody had. It looks so cool. Someday I will definitely get there, because I would love to be immersed in a comic art convention.
I get it. Well, so someday. And
yeah.
Yes. Jason, would you like French fries with that piece of comic art? Just let me know. Take care of you.
Yeah.
Anyway, so where were we? I think we had just looked at slide 6 here. So let me see. Next up is a Lady Death swimsuit piece. So what was this done for?
Yeah, this was done for the Lady Death trading cards. And actually, originally, what I didn't know at the time when I bought it is that this was done for the Lady Death 1994 swimsuit issue, and then it ended up being as one of the trading cards. But this was a neat piece I got off eBay, and it's very unique. The Roy Burdine style of work, I'm not real familiar with any of his other stuff, but I really like the style of this piece. It's just very different looking. And if you go and take a look at this artwork in the 1994 Lady Death lingerie, it really sticks out. Two things about the era is that the 90s gave us digital coloring, and on the bad side is that the 90s gave us digital coloring. The guys who did the digital coloring, I don't think they were in that learning curve period where they weren't, I don't want to say didn't understand, because I'm sure they did understand, but they hadn't quite figured out the process between the digital coloring and what that does on the press side for, offset printing. And that's why a lot of 90s comics are just super muddy, and they just don't look good. And the Lady Death swimsuit issue that this come from is just, it does not look very good. And that's some of the reason why I enjoy the 90s artwork, is that the black and white production artwork like this looks so much better than the final product. I mean, it is just head and tails over of how good it looks over the digital colors. So that's another thing that I enjoy about this piece in particular. It looks way better like this than it does on the chromium card and on the Lady Death issue.
Yeah, no, we've talked about that a lot. You know, the 90s brought a lot of great art from some amazing artists, but the coloring really dragged the comic books down quite a bit,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Let's see here. What do we got next? This one,
Yeah.
Kota. I'm not familiar with this.
Yeah, I was not familiar with it either. I bought this from a dealer online. I can't remember who it was. They were great to work with. Answered questions, and it was a place I don't normally visit. But this one had a little bit of a mystery to its backstory. There was they weren't sure. They were like, we don't know if it's published, we don't know if it's unpublished, we don't know where it's from. And so I started digging around, and I came to discover that this was from a comic book called Lakota, and it was produced in 2021, but Jim Mooney drew this back in 1994. And so he and a writer named Mark Ellis were working on this comic book called Lakota, and they were, he had it all penciled out, and they were working the story together. And according to Mark, is that they had about half the book done, or half the book started, and then the late 90s implosion, where all the when independent publishers weren't getting picked up by Diamond, and the whole thing was just cratering. I mean, if you wanted an independent comic out there, Diamond wasn't going to touch you unless you met some pretty high orders. And so they decided that they were going to put this on the shelf until everything settled down and things kind of got back to normal. And so Jim Mooney at that time stopped doing full-length comics. He was doing commissions, he was doing fine art, he was doing some other things. And then as things kind of progressed, and he ended up, I think he died in 2008, and this book just kind of sat on the shelf, or these pages sat on the shelf. And Mark Ellis found another artist, and I can't recall his name offhand, to help him finish this Lakota book. So they had to finish another 20 some odd pages, and they ended up finishing the book and getting it printed and doing that. But this was Jim Mooney's last his last kind of comic book story that he did. After this, he just would do pinups or commissions or things like that and do freelance. But this was his last his last full story comic book. And so this was the only double page spread that was in that Lakota comic. And it's got all sorts of cool stuff. And it's got the bondage babe tied to the wheel of pain, and the monster, and the evil, Catwoman villain in the center. I mean, and they're in a cave. It's got all the little components that I really like. And that's why I kind of took a chance on it. And first it was Jim Mooney. I mean, it's not much of a chance. I mean, a lot of people I think would buy a Jim Mooney piece if they liked it. I just didn't know what the history was behind it. And come to find out after doing research, it has a very, very cool and unique history. And I'm proud to own this piece by Jim.
That's cool. I always like Mooney's work, but yeah, I'm gonna have to. I've never heard of the title before, but you're right. It has everything you'd want for the collector. What was it? Jason said it reminds him of something out of the Fangoria magazine. Sure, I could. See that.
It's got that great monster feel, and I mean, I'd love a Miss Marvel, Son of Satan, Jim Mooney page, but that's not part of my thing. But this is, I get Jim Mooney's art. mixed in with all the things that I kind of like, and that's where this becomes rewarding, to be able to find a piece like this.
It's a dual cover set. Let's see here.
Oh yeah, okay. So this is Lady Pendragon and More Than Mortal. These are a dual cover by Brandon Peterson from 1999, and I've got another Brandon Peterson piece that's from a Dark Child swimsuit issue, and this one and the other Brandon Peterson piece is very minimalistic. It uses a lot of white space. It's a neat piece. What I really liked about this was one that was kind of a double cover. I don't have a double cover in my collection, and I thought this was kind of a cool concept. But one of the things I enjoy about Brandon's work is that he's got this interesting flow of art style that kind of accentuates the female form, but at the same time it reinforces that strength of the character of the, I overuse the term bad girl, but that's kind of these very strong willed independent female characters. And I think he's got a really, really cool style that emulates that.
Now, well, Tim Townsend's one of my favorite inkers, so this is pretty cool. I think I like this piece a lot.
Yeah.
And now, was this where was this one picked up from? I mean,
that one, I'm pretty sure I got that. Yeah, Comic Link is where I got that.
Very nice. So you've remained a loyal Comic Link buyer, and would you return to Comic Link as a seller if
yeah,
you needed to?
I've got a couple things on Comic Link, and yeah, I kind of I like their I like their interface because it's old school, it's easy, but there's everybody's got a kind of an opinion on Comic Link. I like them. I like their customer service. I feel like I have some allegiance to them for helping me out with the Gonzalo piece. There's nothing against Heritage. I've not ever sent a piece to Heritage. I've got a couple pieces right now at Comic Link, so hopefully those turn out well for me. Maybe next time I'll try out Heritage and see how that goes. But yeah, Comic Link is great. I like it. It's very straightforward. I know people might say that it's not a good place for sellers, but I think it is. I think it's a great place to sell stuff, and it's just it's a different. It's a little more straightforward format. It doesn't have the 3-minute extension like Comic Connect or however many minutes that is. I think Comic Link still works really well for picking up stuff and even selling stuff.
Cool. Next artist is one that I like a lot myself, Mike Diodato, and this is Purgatory, cover from Goddess Rising 4.
Yeah, this was a speaking of Comic Link, this was a Comic Link pickup. I actually got 3 of the 4 covers from this series, all by Diodato, and he's got that 90s look. I've always wanted a piece. These were the first ones I got from him from the 90s era, and I really was looking forward to it. And so I've got them all, and they all end within, they're all ending within like 30 seconds of each other because they got listed one by one. So this one, these auctions were kind of nerve wracking. I know everybody has done this before, but you almost, I didn't want to get stuck. There was 3 covers, and to be honest, you've got 3 different great, I wouldn't say quality, but one cover's really good, one cover's good, and one cover's stellar. And I wanted to have all 3 because I have this fantasy that I'll be able to get the 4th one someday. But so I had to tier my bids, and I'm like, oh, I'm hanging way far out to make sure that I get these 3 covers. So, you have that nervousness of of having a bunch of big bids on there on 3 things, and you're just like, you don't know where they're going to land, because you don't know if one guy wants one and one guy wants all 3, and it's just it was a struggle. So anyway, I actually got these for a pretty fair price by the time you average them out across the 3. And I think the reason why was that in the very next auction, the Dado Glory page 1 that has her big flowing hair, and it's a poster, that was in the very next auction. And I wanted to try and chase after that one, but it went sky high. And I think what might have happened was that people saw these covers and are like, oh, those covers are great, but I'm going to put all my eggs in this Glory pinup basket. And so that went for huge money, way, way over what I thought I was even going to guess. I think it went for $8,000 or $9,000 for that Glory pinup, which is kind of worth it. Honestly, it's the most iconic image of Glory that was produced out of the 90s. So it was a really neat piece. But I think all that hype ended up allowing me to get these for a pretty decent price.
Well, very nice. But do you know where the 4th cover is?
I don't. I don't even think it's on CAF. I think I looked for it, and I've never come across it.
Well, never say never, right? I mean, somebody who owns it might discover that you own the others, and they might offer it up to you.
That's the part that I really look forward to someday going to a convention, is that you'll be able to go to a place where everybody comes together, and you're going to see stuff that you don't see everywhere on the internet. And that's the part that I find really fascinating about going to a convention. And I know I'm talking about it like it's some mystical experience, and there's people in the audience going, yeah, I go to a convention like every 3 months. But where I'm at, it's hard to get there. Like it's a big plan for me to have to go somewhere, because I got to get on a plane and I got to fly. It's going to take a day to get to wherever the hell I got to go, and it's an ordeal for me to go to a convention. So I always talk about it like it's some big, huge religious experience for me someday.
Yes, almost mission impossible, but it won't be. You'll get out sometime, Jason.
Yeah, that's my goal.
All right, so this is by Steve Scott, Razor uncut cover from '96.
Yeah, Razor is one of my favorite titles to collect. This is one of the comic books that I collect interior pages from, just because it was just such a Razor's like she's like one of the 90s bad girls, but trying to read her comics, the continuity is all goofed up, and it's really a challenge. But image wise, all the Razor stuff is really cool. And there was some of probably my most favorite underappreciated artists have worked on Razor, like Steve Scott, and there's another guy who worked on a lot of earlier Razor stuff called Tim Tyler. They're two of my favorite artists that I like to find artwork from. And Razor being, like Marcus said, she's an OG bad girl. One of the things that speaks to my advertising and marketing background is the appreciation I have for Everett Hartsoe and all his crazy marketing stuff that he did and pushed, and that really caught on in the 90s. Now, he did tour books, he did variants and signed and numbered variants and variant covers. And granted, he wasn't the guy that invented that stuff, but he probably pushed the hardest for distributors and for people to just pick up on this whole kind of newer concept of having alternate covers and variant covers and super secret limited edition covers and things that you can only get at conventions. And he he really promoted that. And I always thought that was kind of cool from a marketing standpoint, that he was at the very beginning in that, 1991, 1992, where people started pushing those variant cover things. And he was figuring that out on a small scale, that the independent market, you didn't have a whole lot of money to print 2 or 3 different covers. So he was actually taking pretty big risks doing that, and building the Razor universe and doing all that stuff with a, kind of normal story. I mean, she's a girl, and her dad died and her sister got kidnapped, and then find out that the guy who killed her dad kidnapped her sister and turned her into an assassin. And, it's kind of all that real typical bad girl stuff. But Razor had a dark, violent edge to it that is, appeals to my horror aspects of the things that I like. And so that's one of my favorite parts about Razor. And this is this cover, going back to this cover after I'm rambling on, is I got this from Berkey. It was one of the first ones I got when I first got back into collecting comic art. And I was, I picked it up from him. And as kind of the months that went on, I started realizing how lucky I got by getting a Razor cover, because these covers are not.
But stay off the end.
What's that?
No, I'm here.
Oh, yeah. So I began to discover that the Razor stuff was just doesn't show up. I mean, I don't know if it's floating around in people's collections, or if it's just disappeared. It's really hard to say, because there's not a lot of Razor covers out there. I think actually, I don't know if Dave Kopecki is still in the chat here, but he's got some great Razor stuff. And there's not a lot of existing Razor things out there anymore. Whether they're not being shown off or if they've survived, I don't know. But I'm very lucky that I picked up this cover. Oh, good. Dave is here.
Yeah, and my internet is still as crappy as can possibly be. I'm yelling at my daughters to get off the internet. So yeah, but I think it's ever since that power outage, my router is just like blipping. I keep watching my signal going like this.
Oh.
In my side view of the studio, I can see what my connection is, and it just keeps going down to 1 bar. And then it goes back up. Then it goes to 1 bar. So yes, I was shouting at Gwen, but Gwen texts me back. She's like, "None of us are on the internet." So all right, what we're gonna do, we're gonna power through this, because I feel like at any moment I might drop again, and I hate to.
Okay, well, we're at 1:45, and I'm rambling, so I will go through what we got left, and I'll make it quick.
We'll make it work. And I do apologize, everybody. It probably just means I have to reboot the darn thing after that power outage, but we'll get there. We'll get there. So let me see here. Next up, and I did want to say we have like 6 interiors for Razor in your CAF gallery. So you weren't kidding when you said you pick up the interiors from that. Yeah,
my Razor, it has to be a Razor action page for the most part. So, but anyway, yeah. So Cynthia, this is a Rod Perry piece that actually changed. You can see that that the demon got smaller in the final production piece, and I haven't never been able to track down the reason why, but I'm assuming that because Cynthia is the title of the book, they took the original artwork and redrew the demon to be smaller than Cynthia, because it is a line for line exact part of Cynthia and these rocks, but the demon has been replaced. And so this was kind of an interesting little fun oddball, throwaway title hardly anybody's heard of.
Now, but they've altered the cover a lot. I mean, or at least the way some of the stuff is there. Interesting. Yeah,
that's what I found kind of interesting, that they modified it that much to change that component to make her make her bigger. They went to the whole thing of redrawing a whole different demon.
And didn't come with the extra art or anything like that, right? They
no overlay or no anything. So I don't know where the illustration for that demon might be.
changed her like collar and a few other things too. Yeah. Dave says they might have just light boxed it. That's possible.
Yeah, that would be my guess too.
Marcus, Gwen is on the payroll, so she's paid. She's allowed to get yelled at every once in a while when it comes to my using internet around here. But anyway, what do we got next here? Oh, well, I think this thing might be one of your, if not the most viewed item in your CAF gallery.
Yeah, so this is again, and this is thanks to Dave Kopecki, who's in the chat. I got this from him a while back, and it was just it was a great piece. He was a real nice guy, answering questions for me and stuff. This piece is a J. Scott Campbell from 1994, and so I really wanted an older Campbell piece for just for sentimental reasons, because that's around the time that I was really starting to like his work and appreciate his work, and this was a Spawn trading card, which I don't know if people remember, but they were the taller format of cards. Sandman did the same thing, and it was kind of a neat format at the time, because you're like, ooh, this is a different size, non-sports card. And so this was part of that series. But what made this kind of cool is that, this artwork is only, it's like 8 by 11. So it's not full page, but the format of that tall card let, J. Scott Campbell to get, head all the way down to legs. So you get that really good, that good girl style that he, developed into. You get a really good representation of that in this piece. And it's a great piece. And I love Angela. And actually that was one of my little themes. I did one of the commission, the mystery commission thing that you ran on CAF
sketches. Yeah.
And so I thought, oh, you know what I'm going to do? Because they're doing them on 9 by 12, I'm going to do a little sub collection of Angela 9 by 12 commissions. And so that kind of inspired me to get one of those mystery commissions. So I'm kind of excited about how that will turn out.
Very cool. Yeah, we are. I'm getting more. One of the reps sent me scans for all the artwork that their artist finished. It's was from Japan Comic Art, so they're sending me the package right now. And but yeah, everything's looking fantastic.
That'll be fun. I've never done that before, so I'm excited. I think it's cool.
Yeah, well, we try to keep things interesting around here when we can. Now you mentioned the what if titles before that you were picking some artwork up from. I know you have 2 or 3 in your CAF, so this is one of those.
Yeah, so this is a what if. Let's see, what if Shard, Bishop's sister? No, is Shard her name? I can't remember. Anyway, it's a what if Bishop's sister didn't die, and so this was by Dan Panosian and Mike Halbleib on inks, and this is what I talked about earlier at my comic shop. And so these were some great pages that again have that 90s vibe and that 90s kind of angular feel to the artwork. And this is one of those sentimental pieces along with my other 2 that remind me of my comic shop days. Yeah, Shard. Okay, thanks, Jason.
Jason knows a thing or two about X-Men related characters. If you didn't know that already.
Yeah.
And speaking of, I told you I grabbed a few extra pieces from your CAF gallery because I think that was the last one you sent. So I threw in one other X-Men piece. I figured, gotta appease some of those fans. So this is a nice title page.
Yeah, X-Men Adventures. I picked this one off of CAF. I can't remember the guy, but again, as with nearly all my interactions on CAF, it's always fun. It's always pleasurable. People are happy to help, which is great. And I picked this one up. And one of the things I like about the X-Men Adventures pages are they're actually relatively inexpensive compared to an Uncanny page. And so you can get some of your characters that your favorite X-Men characters, and you can get that for a little less significant price than if you were trying to get an Uncanny page. And so that's when I started trying to look for something in the X-Men adventures. And my What If comics, even though they're What If, they're worth a lot more than $50 a page now. So, and again, they don't kind of turn up. And this one was a nice page because you got Gambit, Storm, and Jubilee, and they're all pretty large scale in that splash page. And that's something that I liked, that you got to see everybody at a large size. And that was one of the reasons I like this page in particular.
Very cool. And you got it from Jason D'Ambrosio. So
did I? Oh,
yeah.
good. Okay. Cool. Well, I'm glad I said that. Yeah, he was a nice guy, because he was a nice guy.
Yes, indeed, he is. So now this one, Randy Queen. I don't think we ever, Randy is a very talented artist, in their day. And it's funny, you don't see a lot of their work around, but this is a cover recreation, I think you mentioned.
Yeah, it's like a cover reimagining from one of his Darkchild covers. And Randy Queen's work is like it's like Mercury. You might see one here and it's gone. I just lost an auction on this past Comic Link that had a really nice Darkchild splash page, and just easy come, easy go. You just sometimes you don't pick them up, but I've picked up a couple newer Randy Queen pages. I really want to find one from the 90s, but they're tough to find, and he does these commissions. I don't even know if he does these commissions anymore, but this particular round of commissions he did for people, and one guy was just the guy I bought this from, I think, was just in the mood to entertain an offer. And I'm pretty sure I lost, because I bought this maybe a year ago, and I'm pretty sure that I went and looked for it because I lost another auction on a Randy Queen piece. And so God damn it, I'm going to get a Randy Queen piece if it kills me. And so I went out and looked around and sniffed around, and this guy entertained my offer, and I got this piece. But it's wonderful, amazing craftsmanship by him. It's just his style is otherworldly when you take a look at it. He's just got a mastery of ink flow and line flow and everything. It's really a treat to look at. And this being a commission, it's from top to bottom. It's solid artistic and drawing skill. It's a great piece.
Wow. Yeah, I know. I felt the same. That's why I picked it out. I was like, that one's a little different than the rest. And,
yeah.
But same with this next piece. And this is actually the last one I think that I pulled out here. So this one made me laugh when I saw it, man.
Yeah, this was obviously outside of my collecting focus, but I saw it and I'm like, oh my God, that's hilarious. And my wife is, a fan of the old Archie stuff. And I thought, oh, this would be fun. And this is Andrew Peepoy, I think is how you pronounce his name. And so he did a bunch of Afterlife with Archie covers. And this one was to be issue number 8. And they went as far as to produce the color version of this. But according to Andrew, is that they were going to produce it, and then they backed off, and I think they were worried about the severed heads. And Andrew spoke with me a little bit about this, and he said, he mentioned that he didn't know why that Archie would have pulled it, because they approved his idea, months in advance. And so he did this piece of artwork, and it's just awesome. I mean, it's just 2 severed heads of Archie and Jughead, and Veronica's a zombie and Betty's freaking out. I mean, it's like, I love this piece. I really dig it. It's so much fun. And combining Archie with horror is just, it's such a great idea. I'm glad that they did that. And Andrew got, I think he did 3 or 4 variant covers for this, and I'm always keeping an eye out for him because I just love his work on the Archie stuff.
No, it's a fun one. Definitely.
Yeah.
That's why I had to include it.
Yeah, I'm glad. That is
When
fun.
I saw it. And this is one of your featured pieces, so it was hard to miss when I was checking out your CAF gallery.
Oh
earlier
yeah,
today.
yeah. It's a top 10 easy one for me.
Well, and a spouse approved piece as well.
Yes, yeah. She thought it was pretty. She thought it was pretty funny too. So that's one I got to sneak under the radar.
Very, very good. Now, is Tuesday your usual night off from the restaurant? Is that how we were able to get this done today?
Yeah, usually nights. Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, we're actually closed 3 days out of the week to do prep. So what I do is like today, I'm doing prep and working on the dish machine. So during the day, when we're on the days we're closed during the day, I usually do prep or I do shopping or I do something at the restaurant. And then by the time 5, 6, 7 o'clock rolls around, I'm at home. And we live 40 minutes out of town. So I like to just go home, and I generally don't have any distractions while I'm here other than cats.
Understood. I have that same problem.
Yeah.
Cats and children. But the thing was, after seeing your name for so long in the chat, I figured everybody had to meet the guy named Dr. Balls.
Yeah, I appreciate it. This was a lot of fun, and I really enjoy being a member of the community, the CAF community, the CGC boards community. I mean, it's my way of being able to interact and get to know people, and there's a lot of helpful people here that like to talk about art, and it's just that's the fun part about when you don't get to meet people face to face when you're out here, and there's just a really good community of people here, and it's great.
That's very true. I mean, I feel pretty fortunate to get to have gotten to know so many people thanks to CAF, and now gotten to meet you. And one day, I know you'll make it out to either our show or a show that I make it out to. I mean,
yeah, and I'll be able to meet people that at least saw me on here, we talked to or bought stuff from, and that's the part I'm looking forward to. It'll be a beer drinking experience, I'm sure. So
lots of fun comments there. But Jewish Dragons just said, I just looked at your menu and now they really want a hillbilly sweet and spicy.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's a good burger. It's crunchy. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. If anybody's in Montana, you come through Great Falls, swing into the Roadhouse and ask for Dr. Balls, and we'll see what my
Does everybody in town know your nickname?
No, nobody knows my nickname.
Okay, that's good. I was a little worried there for a minute,
Yeah.
but yeah. So no, this was good, man. I'm glad we got to do this. So yeah. This was good. I do apologize for the internet issues.
Oh yeah, that was okay. I got to riff a little bit. So
right. Well, see, you just proved that you could host your own show on here if we ever needed a fill in. Dr. Balls is there on Tuesday evenings.
Oh yeah. There you go. You park me down for that. I could do that. I could at least do a little soft shoe, or keep everything on the rails a little bit.
Yeah. And I apologize for those who had to listen to me yell at my daughter. I figured my internet was so down, nobody could hear me at that point because I had 0 bars. And I was getting a little testy there. But anyways, thanks a lot, Jason. I do appreciate it. And again, I really appreciate getting a typed note from somebody on a real typewriter.
Oh.
It took me all the way back to my days of learning how to use a typewriter on the kitchen table when I was still in high school, like 9th grade or something. And that's what you had to learn on.
Yeah.
It was just
Very
surprising.
Cool. No, that's
But
great.
You got it. All right. Well, listen, everybody, we appreciate you hanging out with us and suffering through my internet connection tonight. But again, the doctor was in the house tonight and everything was just fine. And again, 12-year veteran of CAF. We appreciate
look at that. I forgot.
Holy smokes, you know how to use this thing.
I'm not even doing anything. It just came up and did that.
Oh, well, dude, We'll have to talk in the green room afterwards. I'll have to figure out how to do that. All right, everybody, have a wonderful evening, and I'll be back at it again tomorrow night for the 150th episode of the Dueling Dealers of Comic Art. Both Anthony and Mike are ready and raring to go, and we actually are going to do 11 rounds tomorrow because they wanted to have an anything goes round at the tail end of things. So who knows what the heck they're bringing? I have no idea.
Cool.
All right, good night, everybody. We'll see you again soon.
All right.